Reading another article from this book that is The Radiant Writer of Punjab, and it is by Dr. Bhai Jodh Singh. Pretty interesting. So I found it good, found it interesting, and that's why let me just So the Radiant Writer of Punjab. Dr. Bhai Vir Singh was a many-sided genius. He is regarded as the father of modern Punjabi literature. Poet, novelist, historian, journalist, reformer, philosopher, saint, all these epithets apply to him. In modern India, we come across two types of writers: those who write of the day-to-day problems and others who deal with timeless and fundamental issues. Bhai Vir Singh comes under the latter category. He wrote on human interests, on permanent values, on man's deep feelings and thoughts. Even in dealing with the people of his age, he goes much beyond the contemporary scene and underlines moral and spiritual values. His wide scholarship, his creative imagination, his sure sense of style enabled him to paint lovely scenes of nature. Harindranath Chattopadhyay, I just read out in the last episode, that called him the sixth river in the land of the five rivers. Indeed, he is himself a great and fertilizing river of culture and beauty. His poetry possesses the spontaneity of Wordsworth, the music of Tagore, the piety of Milton, and the mysticism of Yeats. He is the symbol and flower of the Renaissance of modern India. He was no idle dreamer. He was essentially a practical man who took active part in molding the society of his time. His efforts in the field of educational and social reforms, his initiative in starting the Chief Khalsa Diwan and the Sikh Educational Conference, his association with the National Academy of Letters and the Punjab Legislative Council, his being a founder director of the Punjab and Sindh Bank, etc. Limited, and managing his own publishing business showed the variety of his interests. The recognition of his service to the cause of Punjabi literature by the Punjab University, which conferred on him the degree of Doctor on Oriental Learning, and the appreciation of the Government of India by decorating him with the Padma Bhushan, show the versatility of this poet-philosopher, the noble part he played in the building of modern Punjabi. So he writes, Dr. Bhai Jodh Singh, he also writes that for Bhai Vir Singh, nature is not merely a feast of the sense but also a living reality. He sees in the myriad forms of phenomenon the vision of the infinite. For him, the flower and the fruit are all full of the divine presence. The chrysanthemum blossom, time, divinity is reflected in the flower. So as light comes from heavens and reflects upon the mirror, so does beauty comes from there and illuminate the beautiful. Bhai Vir Singh finds a moral lesson in the objects of nature. The kikar tree is a symbol of the spiritual seeker who must be ready to face the slings and arrows of worldly power. Like for example, he has written the last 5 lines. I grow upward, and these are the lines from the kikar tree. I grow upward, my march is heavenward. I look at God, of the skies. I live on air I desire not, and yet for me, O world, thou hast but an axe. So the poet goes easily from nature to divinity. Nature is like a ladder to climb to the spiritual heights. So he also writes on page 179 that on the ridge of the Himalayan range, touching the rim of the Tibet border, is a quiet place called Hemkund. Here the 7 summits reflect the light of the waning moon. They shine like 7 masses of silver. The setting moon is about to hide herself. It is the hour of silent tranquility. Soon after the sun appears on the eastern horizon, the 7 hills then appear to be covered with a veil of gold. The sky is brightened with the approaching light. Undoubtedly, this is the lovely Hemkund. So it is easy to cite examples of the rhythm and the eloquence of purple passages from his novel. They show not only the richness of his creative imagination, but also craftsmanship of a very high order. He has been able to combine depth of thought and clarity of diction. His creative spiritualism, his ethical value, his practical mysticism, his great love of short he tried his best to fulfill the aims and objectives of the saints given above. There have been many Sikh scholars of note, but I wonder if there was one who was noted poet, a prose writer, an historian, a lexicographer, an expositor of Gurbani, and in addition to all these, successfully edited a weekly to interest his readers in social reform and advancement of modern education. So that's why. And there is a poem right here, False Learning. So let's just see what he writes here. With the beggar's bowl of my skull, I hankered after those with garnered learning, begging crumbs of their knowledge, stuffing them into this bowl, conceited, puffed with scraps. Learning's mantle I fancied had fallen upon me, strutting like one far gone. One day I placed my surfeited bowl before the master. Leavings, corrupted crumbs, he cried, emptying it out on the highway. Then he rubbed it clean of this pollution. See how it shines now? Its lotus freshness. So there are many others that you can enjoy.